3rd, 2020 Finance Committee meeting.
So moved.
Any question, discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Nays, the motion carries. Next, I am looking for a motion to approve June 30, 2020 Special Tax Incremental District 13 Amendment Finance Committee meeting.
Motion to approve?
Any comments or discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Nays, the motion carries. Next in our agenda is public appearances for non-agenda items. Do I have anyone in the chambers? No? Okay. Anyone online? Okay, no. So next we move to the following item. It's the Finance Director Report. Misty.
Thank you, Julia. So before I get into the variety of reports that were included in the packet from me this meeting, a couple other updates for you. One is CIP amendments. I expect those to be posted to the website on Friday for all of you guys. Sorry, I'm dinging all over the place. On Friday, and then they go out to the public. It was the news flash on Monday. And then budget worksheets were due yesterday. So we're really starting to kind of get in the heat of that process as well. And then the thing that's going to change for all of you for our future finance committee meetings, we bumped this meeting up early because we had such a long agenda. And we ran into a little bit of a problem with the public safety and human services meeting because they started at 6 and were published in the paper. So we're going to start our normal time for finance committee, unless you guys have any heartburn, at 6. From 6 to 7 would be our normal time. And then 7 to 7:30 would be public safety's normal time, so that we don't overlap, so Fact TV can tape all of the meetings that are necessary and we can all stay in chambers. Then we would also have flexibility if we wanted to start early, we wouldn't have to worry about running into that meeting. And then if we do go a little bit late, if there isn't a public safety meeting that night, that wouldn't be a problem either. So unless you guys have any concerns about that plan, that's kind of what we're gonna do going forward just during this state of emergency while we're doing one meeting at a time.
Can you repeat what our start time would be?
So the normal start time would be 6 o'clock. So our meetings would be 6 until 7.
Got it.
Okay.
So then in the packet today, there's a variety of things. First one is the treasurer's report for June 30. There's not too much activity in here other than we did have 3 CDs that matured. We looked at reinvesting them. I actually talked with them again this morning. We looked out for bids to see what we could reinvest for, and it was at 0.15%. So honestly, at that point, you might as well keep your money liquid and keep held on to it because you don't make very much money tying it up. So we're going to look at bids again next week after the Fed meets, and maybe there'll be some movement. But the market is quite a bit down from where we were 6 months ago. And you can see the different interest rates that we are getting now in our more liquid stuff.
Can I ask a question, Misty?
Yeah.
Before you move. So the local government investment pool, the $36 million, that one is the money that the city is investing or collecting for retirement plans for our employees too? No?
Nope. So you're thinking of WRS, the Wisconsin Retirement System.
Yeah.
For that, we pay our contributions to the state, and then it probably isn't the same pool, but it doesn't show up on our books at all.
Oh, okay.
We just pay them the required contribution.
Oh,
so this money that's here, this is basically just another investment vehicle that we use. It's consolidated with all of the other state investments and other municipalities to get, a more diversified portfolio. But you can see the rates, because it is so liquid, is pretty low right now, but everything in the market is.
I have a question, Misty.
Of course.
Maybe it's a user issue. Is it that I cannot see the documents when I go online? All I see is important note, and then it goes on about monthly treasurer reports. Is this a system, or maybe it's just me? Is others having trouble?
Yeah, so the first page is that important note. This is because these reports that I'm filing are all based on that point in time, and we continue to change throughout the year until our books are officially closed. But you should be able to scroll down to get to the rest of the report, unless there's there might be a computer issue.
I am sorry, I'm embarrassed to say, but that first page intimidated me so much I didn't realize there were more additional pages.
It's so important. You were paying attention.
Thank you.
Yep, of course. So because we do have such a full agenda, I won't spend too much time on this report unless you guys have more questions.
No.
No.
So then the next report that we have in here is our monthly COVID report. So this, a lot of the same acronyms at the beginning. For each of the sections, I put whether it was, updated or not updated. So this first item was final, so nothing changed there. The next item, number 2, we did have some more hours that were paid out for an updated cost, so that financial implication was updated. Same with the other categories kind of on this page. So really the policies didn't change, just the cost of those policies have been updated in this month. Then the emergency financial procedures, there was one thing that was added. So for the update here, we added those additional disinfection services. So you should have gotten an email that the mayor approved using this alternative process, hiring an outside company to come in and do extra cleaning simply to address COVID. So our custodial staff will continue to do what they always did, but we'll have this company come in and do just the high touch areas for 6 hours a day. One person at City Hall and one person that's split between the library and the community center, senior center. So really just an extra way for us to make sure that we're limiting exposure as much as possible.
Misty, when will that go into effect? When staff is returned, or when there's a partial staff here? Has it already gone into effect, or?
Yep. So this was approved a few weeks back now, and then
Right.
The cleaning company had to hire people, and then we had to put them through background check, specifically because they're going into the police department and the city hall.
Right.
And so they're walking through this week, and I would expect that they'll actually start doing the services next week.
Okay, very good.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Why, I forgot, why do we have $25,000 for a labor attorney here?
So that was just a placeholder at that point. So especially back when we were doing all of the FFCRA stuff, that took a lot of time with the labor to make sure we were in compliance with the new laws and that our policies were consistent, that type of thing. So we haven't spent anywhere near that, but we also don't know what all is still coming. So that's just a placeholder.
Misty, I have one more question.
Yeah.
Or maybe I don't know, maybe Pat can answer this too. I'm just curious about the disinfection services in the library and in the community center. Those aren't open to the public, are they? We've delayed that opening due to the public health order in Dane County. Is that correct?
That is correct for the library, but we still do have employees in there on a regular basis, no public. Same with the community center. And then we also have appointments only in the community center for parks and rec people that are coming in to whether there's getting a shelter or they're, have something to do with the ball fields or whatever. So the building is open by appointment. And so therefore we want to make sure that it's disinfected.
Got it. And then one other follow-up question. Are the mask mandate is in effect for those buildings for staff and for community members that are attending? Is that correct?
That's correct.
Great. Thank you.
Yep.
So then the budget amendment process, there were no changes this month. The updated purchase that was done was that environmental control one that we talked about earlier with the disinfection services. The utility policy, so this was where PSC came out and said that we could not disconnect or charge interest and penalty for that period of time. That has been updated now, and it's actually changed since I put out this report. So the PSC has lifted the interest and penalty waiver through July 15th. We're still trying to figure out what that means from a logistics perspective, but we have gotten permission from the mayor to continue to waive interest and penalty through November 30th. Which helps us from a quarterly billing perspective. So the PSC will allow us to do that, but we also think it'll help our citizens during this time of uncertainty. And the cost to it isn't so significant that it should cause problems with the utilities. The thing that's changed is recently the PSC has now reinstated that disconnections cannot happen again until September. So we weren't moving along any of those. That's not a big concern, but that is another change that's happened. So we'll continue to follow the PSC rules. And then the total costs, this was updated just as we spend more money. So this includes all of the different categories that we talked about above for the total cost of what responding to this public health emergency has cost the city. And then I included the categories to the right. While I don't know specifics or exact dollar amounts yet, I wanted to give you some indication on if these particular items would be eligible for FEMA reimbursement, the CARES routes to recovery funding, and then whether or not there was an adopted budget impact. The big thing that's changed in this report is we had some great news, which I believe I reported to you guys earlier at another meeting, is that routes to recovery money was opened up quite a bit. So we had a first conference call through the league with the state where we were asking if these certain things were eligible for reimbursement, and it was no, 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 no. But the league and a bunch of municipalities worked with the legislature, I believe with the governor and with the Department of Administration to really explain why it's important that they more match what is allowed under the federal program. And they have since opened that up quite a bit. So there is a couple of things still that is allowed under the federal CARES funding, but is not allowed under the Wisconsin pass-through of that money. But with the significant changes in the eligibility, I think we will be able to use all of the funding that has been allocated to us. So this box here that says most, that's been changed. That used to say little back when the rules were much more stringent.
But we haven't used this $326,000 yet, isn't it? This is an estimate, isn't it?
Nope, this is actual money spent.
Oh.
So there are some nuances in here. So for example, COVID tasked regular time, this $84,000. Some of that will have a budget impact because there would be hours that we brought people in for like LTE to do the elections. That's going to have an actual budget impact to us. But like my time, for example, spent on COVID, I'm a salary employee, so you plan to pay for me either way. Just my time has been diverted to focus on COVID tasks instead. So the $84,000 is the value of all of that time, even though only some of it actually affects the budget.
I am surprised to see almost $3,000 in patrol. That one, which period is from March to June?
Are you talking about that bottom line, the 3,800?
The patrol, almost 3,000 hours.
Oh, gotcha. So that was the altered schedule that was approved. So in order to try to avoid cross-contamination with our officers, we shifted their schedule. So because their salary, we still paid them the full amount that we were required to under the union contract, but they were on standby for a lot of that time and not actually patrolling the streets, for example. So there's a quote-unquote cost to that as well. Which is not eligible for FEMA. It actually is eligible for CARES funding, which is one of those big changes that is going to help us use up our allocation. But there is little budget impact because we budgeted to pay for those officers all year.
One additional question, Misty. I just want to make sure I have an understanding of the terms. So some is the smallest impact, little is the next, like it goes small, little, most.
This was how I felt that day. I don't have a very strong criteria on what I did for them. So
just want the general order.
Little is the very small amount.
Okay.
Because very little of the regular time would actually be eligible for reimbursement only if it's public safety. And for FEMA, it's only if it's for the Emergency Operations Center. For overtime, it's a little bit more expanded. So I'd say it's, in my terminology, it would be little, some, most, or all.
Perfect, thank you.
So then the expected revenue, not too much has changed here other than I went into a little bit more detail about the changes that were made to the routes to recovery program. That changed, and so you can see this section was a little bit different. And then I fleshed out a little bit more about the opportunities for us to reimburse that funding, and then included the link if people wanted to get more information on that state funding. So that's all there. No changes to the Wisconsin Elections Commission piece yet. We have to file a report with them in September, so we're working on the mechanics of that. And then all of these things that would make it easier for us from a financial perspective to address COVID are still all the same that are out there. But if you're watching the news, I'm sure you've heard stimulus 4 is kind of back in the discussion stage. Very much so not going to count on any of that until I see something more final, but it at least is being discussed. So that would help us. And then the last section is the revenues. So this is the general fund revenue category. And if you remember, the main point of this section is that we are very heavily property tax funded, which is a very stable revenue and won't have any impact due to COVID, at least not for 2020. I think for 2021, there will be pressure to keep tax rates lower because of COVID, but the actual revenue source, once it's established, is very stable for us. And then the other categories too, which are smaller amounts, they're color coded to say what kind of the level of impact that might be. And then that was all for the general fund. And then you can see they were updated for June 30, which is the date of this report. And then the next section is all of the other funds that the city has using that same color coding for each one of those. Biggest things or the biggest amounts that we have as far as revenues would be in the debt service fund and the TIDs, which are all property tax based again. So again, no impact for 2020. Capital projects fund is mostly property taxes and borrowing, which shouldn't have too much impact, but there are some other contributions and things like that. And borrowing is to an extent somewhat of an unknown still. We plan to borrow in the fall. The markets have really stabled out a lot. When COVID first hit, the bond market was all over the place. But the legislature at the federal level has done some good things, some tools to try to make that more stable. So I'm not expecting any huge surprises when it comes to be our turn to borrow in the fall. And then the last thing in here is just that appendix. I didn't update this, even though I should probably remove it. Some of this information is outdated now that the routes to recovery program was changed slightly, but that was just there more for a reference. So that's the COVID report. Unless anybody has questions on that one. Okay.
I have a question. For how long is, that we authorize the mayor for an emergency? For how long is that? Do you remember?
So if I remember correctly, the resolution you guys approved was for the same length as what Dane County's emergency is. Okay. I'd have to go back and look and see when theirs ended, or if it's still in place or when it's expected to end. I don't recall that date.
I believe it is it coincides with Dane County's. So we did it once so that it'll just keep coinciding with the county order.
Yeah. So what is the county order now? We are still in emergency?
We're still in the emergency, and I think they extended it through September, or September 15th, maybe. I can check on that.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. And that's important, especially from the granting agencies side. So this funding is available and eligible during the state of emergency. So you want that to be somewhat open so that you can make sure your costs are eligible for reimbursement. So then the next batch of stuff that I have on the agenda is for the TIDs. So every year we're required to file a report with the Department of Revenue that shows kind of the historical part of the TID, what happened during the last year. And then we engage Ellers, our financial advisor, to take that information and look forward to project out what we think the financial status of the TID will be through the life of the TID. And so I've shared these reports now, are required to go to the Joint Review Board, and they have to authorize them. So that happened at that last meeting last week. And then this went to CETA as well. But wanted to share them with you because they are important as we're having all of these conversations. So TID 4 is the first one. So you can see up on the screen now, this is the boundary map. So it has been amended twice. So that's what the different colors are. And then this map actually also shows the overlay of the TID 13 amendment that was just approved. That's in that top right corner with the lines and the hashes. So that's the overlay of TID 13. So TID 4 is an industrial district. It was created in 2003. And then it was amended in 2005 and 2011, adding that territory as shown on the map, and then also adding cost to the project plan. And then it was amended again in 2018 for additional costs within a half-mile radius. So this TID has an expenditure period that ends on May 27th of 2021, which is coming up quickly, and it has a mandatory termination date of 2026. So when the TID was first created, it had a value of all the property that was there of $49 million. As of 1/1/19, which is the most recent values we have at this point, the additional value that has grown is $216 million. So you can see this was quite a successful TID from an increased in value perspective. We also had a fund balance at the end of the year of about $4.4 million. So it's very healthy. We do still have some debt to pay off, which we'll talk about in future slides, but that is a healthy fund balance. We're projecting it to close in 2022. We need to get those projects completed, especially those ones that we added by amendment in 2018. So that's the biggest driver right now about when that TID can close, is when we can get those projects done. Our intention then is to extend the TID by 1 extra year, which is allowed under state law, simply by a resolution by council. And what that does is 1 year's worth of increment we can put into an affordable housing fund. And then there's requirements on how much of that has to be spent on affordable housing and how much of it can be spent on general housing. We're still trying to work out some of those details. We did that extension with TID 7 a couple years back for a much smaller revenue amount. And that's when like the housing plan got paid for and that type of a thing. So we're still figuring out how we want to spend that money, but we'll have a decent amount of money that we can use to help encourage affordable housing come 2023. So then this page here is just the development assumptions. We are at the tail end of this TID, so we know a lot of the information about it. So this is just the estimate of the new projects that are continuing to come in this TID, but these are known figures at this point. And then those plop into here based on our tax rates. We think we will collect, or we could collect if we kept this open through the life of the TID, bottom right corner, $44.7 million more. But again, we're planning to close it a few years early to get that property back onto the rolls that they start paying into the budgets of everybody instead of being diverted to the TID project.
I have a question on that page, Misty.
Yeah.
And this kind of applies to all these reports and the following ones. So the tax rate estimate, it goes down over the years. Can you explain why that's the predicted tax rate?
So the biggest piece of it is conservativeness. So we would much rather under promise and over deliver, especially when we're making these projections that are so far out. Bigger reason though is our tax rate has been decreasing over recently, at least, with levy limits in particular that has been constraining the budgets, but the value of our properties are still going up. So the rate has been falling somewhat recently. It goes up and down, of course, but it's not unexpected completely that it would actually fall by that 0.5% going forward.
Great, thank you.
Mm-hmm. So then this page is the cash flow of the TID going forward. So the first section, I'm going to start working left to right in the report. So the first section is the orange part, which is all the revenues that would come into the TID. And again, this is through the life, so it doesn't necessarily factor in that we're going to close early. But we are collecting about $4 to $5 million a year in tax increment. And so if you remember, I said 1 year of that can go into the Affordable Housing Fund if we keep it open a year. So there'll be about $5 million to help seed some projects through the city specifically for affordable housing. So that'll be a nice tool for our toolkit. We're then earning interest on our money because we have a decent amount sitting in the bank. We also, for this TID and a couple of the others, we're getting computer exemption aid from the state, which was a program that has been canceled now at this point. So our more recent TIDs will not get this aid, but the older ones do. And then same with the personal property exemption aid payment from the state is a revenue to this TID. On the expense side then, we have some debt that's still outstanding. So this 2001, the 2011 bonds, This was for the interchange, and it's callable, which means we can prepay it without penalty come December of 2021, which is what I plan to do because there is sufficient money to pay for it in the TID, and then it will save on interest costs going forward. This 2012 debt was also for the interchange. That was callable this last year, so we prepaid all of that with cash out of the TID in order to reduce interest costs. The 2015 bonds, this was for a railroad project that was in the TID. This is callable in April of 2022, so we would do that as well, especially before we close the TID. Then we do have 2 outstanding pay-as-you-go bonds. So most of our TIDs are funded through pay-as-you-go bonds. What this means is that the development incentives and the infrastructure reimbursements will only get paid back to the developer as they pay taxes in. So for example, if a project doesn't happen, then they wouldn't get reimbursed for those costs. So we're really strong on the pay-as-you-go aspect. There is one PAYGO still open from 2017 for ProMega. Originally, I had planned to pay that off this year, but when the decision point happened was in April 1st, which was right when COVID was happening, and I was just uncertain about what that meant financially. So I decided to hold off for a year. So we'll look at prepaying that next year instead. And then we have a relatively new PAYGO for the Techlands Kamika building. What we'll do on this one is we'll watch to make sure that their value is where they expected it to be. And then council can make the educated decision to prepay that, even though they technically haven't paid in all of the taxes required. But since we have the cash to pay it and we really want to close the TID, we would more or less take that gamble. We'd prepay it ahead of time, assume that the building will stay there as is, they will continue to pay their property taxes, etc. And so that is outstanding, and it's shown through the payment schedule that's out there, but we'll likely prepay that when we close it. And then there are some cash capital expenditures still that need to happen. This $1 million is for the intersection at Lacey and Syene, which is expected to happen 2021 maybe into a little 2022. Then there is some administrative costs. So, anytime we have Ellers look at stuff, staff time, like my time putting together these reports, that type of thing is all charged to the TID. So that's shown as an expense too. So then the far right in the gray section, you can see the balances, and this yellowish, brownish box here in 2022 shows that at that point, our cumulative balance of the $17 million is more than our outstanding debt. And at that point, we should have all of our projects done. So we know our final numbers, and that's when we would technically close the district. But then we would keep it open that one more year for the affordable housing, so it would actually close in 2023. Then what's in this report is the report that I'm required to file with the Department of Revenue. So it's called the PE 300. This report really just looks at what our balance was at the beginning of the year, the ins and the outs during 2019, and then the ending balance for 2019. And then they do ask for future costs and future revenues to try to get an estimate of the surplus or deficit. So I won't go into detail on these reports and each one of the other TIDs, but they're out there. It's also really nice if you're curious about the TID status of other municipalities. All of these are required to be posted to the Department of Revenue's website, and you can sort them and filter them and look at anything that you're interested in. So that's TID 4. Any questions on that before I go to TID 6? Okay. So TID 6. I have to scroll down. There we go. I have too many things open. TID 6. So this one is also called Orchard Point. This is really up kind of by Target, was the original area, that old quarry. So Target, Hy-Vee, all of that up there. And then it was amended subsequently to include that Spoke and Sprocket area east of that. So this map, of course, is taking a really long time to load.
I have a question about this, Misty.
Yep.
And this is true for several of the maps for the rest of it. The amendments they still say proposed addition, and they don't actually say that they were amended. And I was just curious if that's something that we could update just for good record keeping for those maps so that it's clear that those are amendments and not something that's forthcoming.
Yeah, I believe they just took them out of the proposal at the time, but that's a
Got
good
it.
point. I can get them better maps. And so you'll see this yellow part is what the original was, bounded by Verona Road and McKee. And then the red part is what that amendment was. So this TID was created in 2006 as a mixed use district. And then it was amended in 2013, which was what added that additional area and then added some additional project costs to it as well. This one has an expenditure period that also ends in 2021. And this one has a mandatory termination date of 2026. The base value, so this one's a little different because we did amend it for so much area. This base value would have been as of the amendment. So since that happened in 2013 and Target and a lot of that stuff all came before that, that's included in that base value. So the actual incremental value
Yeah.
be a little bit more. So at 96 million there, they had a fund balance of 6.7 million. So again, a very healthy and successful TID for us. The projected closure on this one is 2023. So while the expenditure period is about the same as TID 4, and TID 4 has projects, TID 6 also has projects that still has to get done. So the roundabout is recently completed, but McKee Road, the phase 2 that's currently under construction, needs to be completed. One of the big pieces that's paid for out of the TID is that pedestrian bike bridge that's going over it. So we want to make sure that we know final costs for that. The other big thing with this particular TID is we have an open assessment claim for one of the bigger stores in that TID. And we want to make sure that that claim is final, whether it's settled or there's a judgment through the court process before we actually close the TID, because we want the TID to pay for the attorney's costs and then if there is any sort of a settlement or something for that.
Can I ask a question for you or for Mike?
Mm-hmm.
Can we in the future avoid to have those big stores suing us if we put them in a tax incremental district? We can put it in a developer agreement that they cannot sue the city, when they receive the first assessment of, you know what I mean?
Yep. So while the PAYGO bond is open and it's not fully paid off, we have that language in most of our development agreements, unless they're manufacturing assessed.
Okay.
But this one, the PAYGO was paid off quite a while ago. I want to say
okay.
2015. So at this point, that clause doesn't apply. But that has discouraged some suits in some of the other ones.
Okay.
And that's exactly why we do it. I mean, we don't want to be giving a development money and at the same time defending something, and spending the attorney's costs on that. So TID 6 again is towards the tail end. So these net new construction numbers are pretty solid, and they calculate into the tax increment projection worksheet. So if we kept this open through the life, we'd collect another bottom right corner to 22 million in tax increment. For cash flow, so starting at the left again with revenues, so we've got the same categories as TID 4, so tax increments, but you'll see this one's collecting quite a bit less per year, just because the value of the TID is not quite as high as what TID 4 is. It's still very healthy. Interest costs again, and then those two exempt aids from the state. This one has some debt outstanding too. So 2015 debt, this was the tail end of Spoke and Sprocket. So we're still paying that off. And then there's one PAYGO that hasn't been issued yet, but I expect that it will be soon for the Benjamin Investments building. That was the third floor, has been recently rented and built out. So I would suspect that they'll be requesting their PAYGO soon. There was also a rent guarantee on that building, which has been paid now as of 2020. And then we have some capital expenses still coming out of this TID that we'll pay for with cash. That's the roundabout from last year, and then the McKee Road project that's happening this year. Some administrative costs that we'll expect to continue. And then the orangish, brownish, yellowish box shows that we can close it in 2023, or that's when we're currently expecting to close it. but we'll keep it open for that 1 year for the housing extension again. So 2024 is when we would actually close it completely and it would come back onto the roll. And then after that is that same report that I have to file with the state. So any questions on that one? No. Okay. Next is TID 9. TID 9 is the Seminole and Lacey intersection. So this one was created originally for an expansion project with Sub-Zero. It was amended, just little bit extra, and then there was a bigger amendment recently for that whole area. So this is the map of all of that.
Misty,
Yep.
I just wanted to make that same comment about the fact that it still says proposed amendment 2 and not approved.
Yep.
Okay.
Absolutely. Yep. So I'll get a more firm map in there. We have them. Absolutely. So this TID was created originally in 2015, and it's an industrial district, which means it has a shorter life than, say, a rehabilitation district. It was first amended in 2016 to add territory and amend the project plan, and then it was amended the second time in 2019, which added the more territory and amended the project plan to include costs within a half-mile radius. So this is the TID that has those CIP projects that we've been talking about. So this has an expenditure period that ends in 2030, and that has a mandatory termination date of 2035. The base value, which would have been the original TID, was $43 million, and that base value will change once that amendment is finalized for 19. So the 1119 value will change, or 1120 value. So the incremental value as of 1119 was about $27 million. So still a decent improvement in value there. This one does have a negative fund balance. A couple of reasons why. Generally in the beginning of a TID, you will go negative by a little bit because you'll have administrative costs and creation costs and things like that that you pay for before the tax increment comes in. Because the construction that happens in 2019, for example, will be a tax increment that would be generated for the 2021 budget. So there's that 3-year delay. So this one does have a relatively small deficit at this point. It was because of the administrative costs, but also because the TID paid for the Sub-Zero Parkway extension up front. So while we usually would do projects like that as developer pay-as-you-go bonds or the PAYGO or MROs, for that one, the TID paid for that infrastructure right away. There are some really good things happening in this TID though. So the Promega R&D facility was partially completed as the first of 2021, and it's expected to be completed in the spring or summer of 2021. The Sub-Zero new facility was 15 to 20% complete as of the first of this year. And expected to be occupancy in January of 2021. Race day events was nearly complete as the first of this year. And at this point, it is complete except for some landscaping. And then Hop House, which is the brew pub right on the corner, was 10% complete as the first of this year. They are done now, and I believe they're expected to open shortly if they haven't already. So this one, we did spend a little bit more time on those development assumptions because not as much is known at this point. And this is part of my concern with the CIP part of it too, is because those two biggest buildings that are contributing towards the TID are both new. They're still under construction, which causes an uncertainty with the value. But more important than that too, they're also manufacturing buildings, which means the state sets their assessment. So they have a completely different methodology on how that's done. So there's just a lot of uncertainty with where the value of those buildings will actually come in. But we did put in the actual amount that has been created so far since its creation is that gray column. Net new construction estimates based on those buildings that are under construction now. So they are estimates. We don't know finals yet. More importantly, though, that next column to the right, this additional value needed, Besides those buildings that we know are in the works right now, we need another $16 million worth of value in order to cash flow the TID as projected by the mayor's proposed CIP. So that's additional value that would need to be built also without any tax incentives. So if they wanted a development incentive in order to build that building, obviously the value would need to be higher in order to pay that incentive as well as contribute to the rest of the cost of the TID.
But, so that one I want to mention that we discussed this in CEDA. We had this presentation, and one of the concerns that we have in CEDA is that if you can put the map, one of the concerns that we need to think about for future is some of those parcels, like parcel, parcel number 4 is a big pond of water, so we cannot do anything there. Parcel number 3 is the actual Promega, where Promega is being built. Then what is number 9 is where Hop House, race event buildings are there. Number 8 is Sub-Zero. So we need to look at this and say number 2 it could be another opportunity there, is empty. So, and number 10. So, in the future, if we need to generate $50 million more in incremental here, we have only 2 parcels, I will say 2 parcels left. And number 5, I don't know, number 5 is very tiny there.
And there is a little bit more off of kind of the bottom right corner of 4Q, but it's small. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but that one is kind of like a wetland.
Right.
So, but you know what I mean? So we have to think about all of that in the future.
Yeah. So it's definitely doable. I mean, yeah. It's possible, but this is what concerns me about putting too much infrastructure in with the risk that we may not be able to get that paid off. Because the TID, all of the overlying jurisdictions pay into the TID because the whole tax bill is deferred to pay for the project plan costs. But if the TID is not successful and has an amount owed at the end of the life of the TID, it is only City of Fitchburg taxpayers that has to pay that off. So it is a risk specifically to the city.
I have a comment and also a question, if that's okay. Yeah. First, we're about to vote at council next a whole bunch of resolutions that are preparing for a stormwater study for that sub-zero kettle. So just something to note for people that are watching and are interested in this TID and this area in particular. And that also intersects with some conversations that I expect we're going to have on August 11th when we vote on the CIP amendments. Some of those are probably going to be related to this particular area and are definitely financed by TIF. From this district. Is that correct assessment, Misty?
Yep, absolutely.
And then a question for you is it possible to include this TID report as a supplement to any amendments that are related to that Lacey and Seminole intersection that might be forthcoming in the CIP discussion?
Sure. Could I include a link instead out to the website so that people have access to it? I worry about the packet getting to be too thick.
Yeah, that would be okay. I just want to make sure that because obviously the 3 of us are taking a look at this, and I can encourage the other alders, but I definitely think this is a great context for that discussion that's forthcoming. So yeah, a link would be great as long as there's some notification that this is a supplement that would be worthwhile for people to review prior to that voting process.
That's a great idea. Yeah. And then the other thing I'll say that concerns me about this TID in general, is obviously the development piece of it, but also the different projects that were included in the project plan. Almost all of them are coming in higher than what we thought that they were going to be when the project plan was originally created. So we kind of have a revenue problem, but we also have an expense problem, which is not a good place to be. So I'll continue on. So we talked about the development assumptions. So putting those development assumptions here into the same calculation, you'll see the future value of the increment. We could collect another $55.9 million to help pay for those costs. So this schedule here was not in the other ones, but what this is Ellers looked at the different projects that are in the mayor's proposed CIP. So this would not include any amendments that are proposed or will be discussed or acted on in August. But what would debt issuances look like, and what costs would there be associated with that, and what payment plans would there be associated with that, as they are now, to try to see how the cash flow would work. So this is a chart you're familiar with from before. So starting on the left, the projected revenues. So those increments came from that other page that we were just looking at. There is a little bit of interest earnings. This TID is actually borrowing money from the general fund, which has a cost on the other side. But since it borrows money from the general fund in $1,000 increments, there's a little bit of money sitting there, and then it gets spent, and then it's there. So there's a tiny bit of interest earnings here, but in a perfect world, that would wash out, and we'd only do it to the dollar of what we needed. There is a little bit of intergovernmental aid available in this TID because it was created before those programs escaped, and then same with personal property aid. On the expense side, we have the existing PAYGO or MRO for the Sub-Zero expansion. This one has been issued, and this is the payment schedule that's in place. Then there's another proposed MRO or PAYGO for the Sub-Zero's new building, the one that's under construction now. And then a separate one for the Promega new building that's under construction now. So both of these are estimates at this point, other than the interest rate has been negotiated. If they build what they say that they're going to build, this is the dollar amount that we've authorized, but it could be less if for example, the building, they didn't spend as much as they said that they would, then the amount of our incentive would be less. So that is still an estimate at this point, but it's a pretty solid one. Then we have a PAYGO for Supreme Structures. This would be the combination of race day events and Hop House. So it's all under one development agreement. This one also has not been issued yet because the buildings are not final. And then I expect that we'll need to start borrowing some money in order to pay for those project costs. So we'll expect to borrow in 2021, 25, and 26, again, based on the mayor's proposal. And this is some estimated payment structures for those bonds. Then there is some capital outlay that is paid for by cash that is shown here. Here you can, the next column, the half-mile Sub-Zero Parkway, that's that road extension that the TID put in up front. And then there's another project there. This fiscal charges, this is the interest that TID 9 is paying to the general fund, and it's based on the LGIP balance. So last report I was talking about with the treasurer's report, the market has gone down quite a bit. So we are lending our money to the TID at what we could reinvest it at. So for a much lower interest rate than what the TID would have to pay if it went out to the external market. So for the short-term stuff, we can do that, we can float it, but that's not a sustainable strategy long-term. And then some administrative costs are there. So this one you can see, at this point, we are projecting to go out through the entire life of the TID in order to pay all of the costs that we're expecting to pay. Plus, remember, there's that $16 million worth of additional value that needs to be generated in order to even get to this point. So this is the one that I have the most concern about from a financial perspective. And then it's the report for the state. Any questions on that one?
No.
Okay. So then TID number 10. TID number 10 is the Northfish Hatchery Road corridor. So the darker blue parcels are what it started at when it was first created. It was really a project-specific TID. And then the city took a gamble to an extent, a calculated risk, and expanded the boundaries in order to pay primarily for the reconstruction of Fish Hatchery Road, with the expectation that redeveloping that road will help encourage redevelopment in that corridor. And so far that has been a successful strategy, but something to keep our eyes on still. So this TID was created in 2015, and it's a rehabilitation district, which means it gets a lot more time in order to pay off the costs. and then it was amended in 2018 to add that boundary and then also add additional expenses. So the expenditure period ends in 2038, and it has a mandatory termination date of 2043. The base value as of when the TID was amended was $43 million, and it has an incremental value, so the additional value that's been created since it was amended, of about $1 million, which isn't a lot, but it's a very new TID at this point. And if once we get those 1/1/2020 numbers, I expect that to be quite a bit higher. There was a fund balance in this TID as of the end of 2019 of about $3 million. That is the money that I borrowed to pay for the Fish Hatchery Road reconstruction that we haven't spent yet. So it's not excess increment, it's just a cash flow piece. As the Fish Hatchery Road project continues, we will obviously spend that money plus more as we go. And so the projected closure is 2040, which is a few years earlier than it's required. So it was required to terminate in 2043. We think we'll be able to close it in 2040. Some recent changes in this TID. So UW Credit Union was completed and tenant build out is being added for 2021. There was a remodel of the Country Pines apartments in 2020. There's the new apartment building with retail at the former juice plant on 3101 South Fish Hatchery Road. And then the senior Highline apartments, which is the ones across the street on Traceway. So as of the first of this year, they were 65% complete. And then occupancy has actually already been granted and people are moved in and living there. So for this one's going to be similar to TID 9. So this gray column is our actual increment that we've seen. So we've only had this 1 year so far of value. And then our net new constructions in the next column is the projects that are in works now that we know are going to move forward, what we estimate those values to be. And then the column after that to the right is the additional value that we're going to need in that TID in order to cash flow all of the projects that we're expecting. That one's at 25 million, which honestly, if you consider the infancy of the TID and just the opportunity that's available in that corridor, that number didn't scare me as much as I feared. I think that's pretty doable. So then plopping those value numbers into the calculation, bottom right corner, the tax increment that we can generate is about $34 million, which we'll use to pay for the costs. So then this one, increments on the left, interest earnings, again, similar to TID 9, how for the beginning, they were borrowing money from the general fund to pay for their costs. And then we've had one debt issuance so far in 19, and then I expect to borrow more in 2020. On the expense side, we do have an existing agreed upon MRO or PAYGO bond to Plesco, which is the senior Highline apartments. They haven't submitted to finalize that yet, but I expect them to request the full amount. And then we have issued bonds for the first part of Fish Hatchery Road, which is the GEO Bond Series 19. So that is an actual payment that we've committed to. And it continues the MRO for the old juice plant, 3101 Fish Hatchery Road. That project is moving along nicely. I don't know if you've driven by lately, but it's really transforming. So this is the estimated payment schedule based on the development agreement, but is not final until the building is complete. And then the next section of columns is the expected payment schedule for the 2020 bonds that we'll need to issue for the rest of Fish Hatchery Road. Some administrative costs again, so you can see the same thing as before. So we think we will close in this orange box in 2040. And I would hope that if the affordable housing extension is still allowable at that point, that the city would likely do that again at that point.
Question, Misty, if you go back, please. Mm-hmm. All of your projections appear to be positive until you get further out, and all of a sudden there's and looking from the screen here, there's one in the red, and just so far out. What makes that change? I mean, why does that so far out? Why? And all of a sudden it turns positive again.
Yeah, so that's mostly this 2020 bond series. So for $2,000, a lot can change between now and then. So having just a little bit of a red that far out wasn't concerning. You can see the biggest reason is here in this 2020 column. That
Okay.
year when it was barely positive, we made a $550,000 principal payment, and then we jumped up to $820,000 the year after because some of those other pay-goes fell off.
Okay, all right,
So it's just kind of a timing thing.
okay, got it.
Any other questions on TID 10?
No.
Okay.
Misty, I want to make a comment. It's 6:25.
Yep, we're almost done. The rest of them are easy. So
Okay.
TID 11, we did not hire Ellers to do the work for us on that one because there was a project in mind when this TID was created, but that project is no longer viable. It's not something that's being pursued. So we do have a negative fund balance. Beginning of the year, it was 30,000. At the end of the year, it was 31,500. So it's sitting at a relatively small balance. That amount could be absorbed by the general fund really easily if this TID does need to close because there's nothing coming forward. But we still have a glimmer of hope that some project will still come forward for this particular parcel, and we'll be able to do something. And then this is the clean fill site.
But I think I believe that we need to keep it open, because for opportunities, so if someone can, we have everything ready to go, you know what I mean? So,
Yep, exactly. But we also don't need to sink extra money into it either.
yeah. Mhm.
Run it lean. So that's all of that one. TID 12 is the new Promega building on Sherrill, right off by City Hall. So you can see this is what the boundaries are. This one was created in 2018 as an industrial district. Expenditure period ends in 33 with a final or mandatory termination year of 2038. I had a base value of 128 million because this one was an overlay with TID 4. Incremental value just as of the 1st of 2019 was about $10 million. I expect this number to be quite higher when the 1/120 values are out because that building is nearing completion. This one also has a negative fund balance as the end of 2019, which is for the administrative costs and some staff costs to kind of get this TID going. Because that new building hasn't generated anything yet through 19, but they'll be able to wipe out that deficit really quickly. And then it's projected to close through the life of the TID at this point. And so that building, which is the cornerstone of this TID, was 68% complete as of the 1st of 2020, and we expect it to be complete this year. So this one is also a manufacturing assessed building, so there is some uncertainty as far as what that value is going to be, but we did have at least a placeholder based on 2019, what we think 2020 will be. And so those numbers are in here, and no additional value is needed at this point in order to pay for all of the expenses of this district. So putting those values in, 26.7 million is what we think we could collect in increment through the life of the TID. And then cash flow starting from the left, projected revenues. The only thing that this TID gets would be the tax increment and the interest earnings because it is a new one. It doesn't get those two other state aid payments. On the expense side, we really just have an MRO or a pay-as-you-go bond to Promega. They are the ones that put in the Fahey Glen extension and then are getting reimbursed through the pay-go. So this one we did a great job of mitigating the city's risk. So then we expect that we will be able to close it in 2038. And then the report. Any questions on this one? Okay. And then TID 13, we also didn't hire Ellers to do that one because you guys just approved the TID 13 amendment June 30th. Joint Review Board approved it last week. So nothing really has changed in there from what that was. So we did not pay for that extra thing. As of the end of the year of 19, they had a small deficit similar to 12 due to administrative costs, but we expect that to fully pay off before the life. That is all I have.
Okay. Any question for Misty before we move to the next item?
None from me.
Okay.
No, none from me.
No? Okay. So next, thank you, Misty. So next we are going to move to the review of the bills. So, I always forget, do I need a motion for this one? So we need to a detailed review of the all check for $10,000 and above, dated June 16, 2020 to July 15, 2020, totally $2,035,144.79. Do we have any question here? One second. Here. No? Okay. So next we move to the detailed review of all check issue, check number 120930-121020 dated June 16, 2020 through July 15, 2020, total $2,206,208.20. Any comment? I have a question, I think so here. One second. There is something for Rdas here. Where is that? I forgot. Okay, I don't know where it is. Any question? No? Okay, so next we move to the detailed review of the ACH payment for $10,000 and above, dated June 20, totaling $618,114.91. Any question? So it's in this one where there is the pickable design for $11,000. Misty is in this package.
It wouldn't be in the ACHs.
Oh, okay.
It might have been in the 10,000 and above.
Okay. No, because I want to know this $11,000 is the final design cost, or is an installment, or?
I'm not sure, but I can get you that answer.
Okay, thank you. Then we need a detailed review of all ACH payment dated June 20, totaling $620,190.88. Any question? No? Okay. Next, we are going to review a detail of all the P-card transaction for $10,000 and above.
I'm
the
sorry.
cycle ending June 8, 2020, total $157,551.18. Any question? Okay. And then we are going to review the P-card transaction for the cycle ending June 8, 2020, totaling $319,173.55. Any question there? Wow, okay, no one had question. Okay.
Actually, I do have a question.
Okay.
I'm going to jump back to the ACH payments, and this question is probably for Misty. Let me just get back to that.
Which one? Which batch?
Letter D, detailed review of all ACH payments. Let me just open up the document. The question I have is for vendor 40, Madison Gas and Electric, for $97,931. It's really just an education on my part. We have a lot of solar associated with the city of Fitchburg on the roof of this building, so forth. Is that a payment out, and then we're reimbursed from whatever's generated from the solar on another line of the journal? Can you explain that, Misty?
Yep.
All right, thank you.
So that is a net amount. So the amount of energy we use is that there's a subtraction for the solar piece when we're invested in the O'Brien farm. For the solar that's on our building, that solar isn't in the factor at all. So this is just the net payment that we make to MG&E for our electric use. I know that the sustainability specialist is working on a report on ways that we can make that even more efficient, which I suspect will be coming in front of you guys sometime in the near future. Those solar arrays are helpful, but they're definitely not anywhere near 100% of the energy that the city uses.
Sure, I would believe that. Okay, so this is what's going out, but whatever we generate comes in elsewhere.
There's no money for it though. So this would be the net cost.
Oh, it's the net. Okay. Got it. Thank
And
you.
this is what is for a period. Which period is like a 1 month, 6 months?
It would be for 1 month. I don't know which month it is though.
Okay.
That's you.
Okay. Any other question? Okay, so we move to the action items, okay? So I need a motion to approve resolution R-117-20, approval to purchase replacement firefighting turnout gear.
Motion to approve?
Do you need a second? Second? I don't think you do, though. No, you don't.
So who is gonna explain this? I have a question also with this.
So this is a replacement of 12 sets of gear that are set to expire. You'll see the pre-approval is included in the packet that shows you all of the details on the purchase. We generally go through the same vendor so that all of the turnout gear is from a consistent provider. And it's within budget.
So it was in the budget, isn't it?
Yep.
My question is, I want to ask a clarification question. Sometime in the resolution, in the last, in the actual resolution, we include the cost, and some of them we don't do that because, if we go to this resolution, we don't. When they say now be hereby resolved that the city of Fitchburg, blah blah blah. Usually we put the amount there in that phrase. Can we do that? I don't know why in some of them we do it and some of them we don't do it. And for consistency, I don't know.
Right. So this one, it generally either would say for the dollar amount from this vendor, or it would say as included on the attached pre-approval, because that pre-approval form then becomes an attachment to the resolution. But you're right, this one doesn't have either one. So that was a mistake, but it's intended to be as shown on the pre-approval.
Okay, thank you.
But that does bring up another good point, Julia, that I should point out is that this resolution also is authorizing the old gear, the expired gear, get donated to departments in Mexico. So we are getting permission for that too.
Okay.
So, a question, Randy. So to follow up, there is no dollar amount associated with this resolution?
There is. It's with the pre-approval. That was
it's in the document. You need to go to the document to look.
I'm looking at the documents. Yes, and so you're saying of one of these 4 documents, there's a dollar figure.
Mm-hmm. Yep, 33,244 is the amount.
Okay.
Any other question? All those in favor of approving resolution R-117, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Nays. The motion carries. Next, I am looking for a motion to approve resolution R-119-20. It's a 2020 on-base annual maintenance and support.
Motion to approve?
Okay.
Julia, I can take this one.
Okay.
So OnBase is the software that we use for agendas, as well as all of our workflows, like our pre-approvals and our payment requests and all of that stuff too. And we have to pay an annual maintenance cost for that software. So this is the same vendor that we have currently, and it's a budgeted amount.
Okay, so this one is something that we do every year. So all those in favor of resolution R-119, say aye.
Aye.
Nays, the motion carries. Next, I am looking for a motion to approve resolution R-122-20, authorizing acceptance of the Fitchburg water and sanitary extension bid.
Motion to approve?
Okay, so who is going to explain this?
Looks like me. So the supporting document is a memo from staff that explains what the project is. This is extending water and sanitary for this project. The project was publicly bid, which includes publishing it in the paper and putting it on Quest. And then based on the bid opening, the low bid is selected and presented for you for approval.
Yeah, I have a question because I went to the document and first of all, I want to know what it was the budget for this project. And then this one was my first question. Second is, I know that, you mentioned that it's coming under budget, but also there is a deficit and then you need to move money from one fund to the other one. So I don't understand that.
Yeah, so there was one piece of the project that came in more than what was expected. So there is a request for moving 150,000 from one CIP project into a separate CIP project. So that is included in here, but everything else was within budget. And the amounts of the different budgets, I believe, is in that memo as well. So it's kind of in the middle of that first paragraph. So the bid is 18.7% below the estimate. Budget includes the 296,000 for Lacey Road Sanitary, 869 for TID 9 amendment, etc.
Okay, so what it confused me, it was that, I here in the memo, that it was draft from Tracy, she said that the lower bid was, James Peterson, but it was below the engineer estimate, okay. So this is what I have a question. The engineer estimate is one thing and what we budget is another thing. So, and I would like to see here, if they're gonna use a language, also maybe they need to put in parentheses what it was the total budget, because, the engineer can say, we budgeted last year for an amount, then this year construction costs went up, and then we, So this is what, and I saw that in a couple of those, in another ones too. They use the engineer's estimate, that is coming under. But yeah, okay. But for me, it's more important to determine is about what is the amount of budget for this, and we're coming under or above the budget. So it's, I don't know.
So this didn't do a good job of saying how much we may have been under budget, but anytime you go over budget, a budget amendment is needed. And so that's why that one line was necessary for that. And we do look project by project, or like piece of the project within there. So there is one piece of it that was over budget, the rest of it was under budget.
And I have another question. So is this going to be assessed to neighbors? How we're going to recuperate this money? Or is a cost that the city is going to take?
I am not certain. The piece that's paid for by TID 9 generally would be paid for by the TID, but I'm not certain. The McGaw Park water main piece of it is paid for by park improvement fees. And then the other piece of it is paid for by park improvement fees from Fahey Field. So those two pieces I know for sure will not be specially assessed, but I'm not certain about the rest of it.
Is Bill here or someone from Public Works to answer our question?
He was when the meeting first started, but I don't see him now. Pat, do you have more information on this one?
He's mute. He's gone. Okay, so for curiosity, I would like to know if this is, some of these expenses are going to be assessed or not.
I will find that out as well.
Okay. Any question for the rest? No? Okay. No.
Pat's back.
Okay. I don't know, maybe we can ask Pat is back. Pat?
Yep, go ahead.
Resolution R122 is the Fitchburg water and sanitary extension bid.
Yeah,
So that one is the extension for the Rdas and some of those east neighborhood, isn't it? Correct?
correct.
So that one, some of these expenses are gonna be assessed to the neighbors, isn't it?
Correct. It'll be
Okay.
assessed to some areas that are, areas in Uptown,
Okay.
along with some of the properties on Clayton, and then, some of the work's even being done in McGaw Park.
Oh, okay. Okay. Any question? All those in favor of resolution R-122-20, say aye.
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 Aye, nays, the motion carries. Next, I am looking for a motion to approve resolution R-126-20, resolution declaring the city of Fitchburg intent to continue our partnership with the city Madison Metro Transit.
Motion to approve.
Okay, so what is this about?
Yeah, so this is my resolution, and I don't believe that this has any financial implication for the city, so we can probably go through this pretty quickly, but it's just a matter of it's the resolution's intent is to clarify our commitment to be a part of the Metro Transit network, it's in the context of the fact that Madison Metro is actually looking at how to improve their system and incorporate bus rapid transit. So we're going to commit to be a part of that, provide information for their network study so that we can improve Fitchburg routes, and also just clarify that we want to be able to provide public transportation to our residents.
So this resolution went to Transportation and Transit Commission and Resource Conservation. What it doesn't say here it was approved, no.
It passed both of those committees.
Okay. Any of the comments from those meetings?
Julia, I'd like to weigh in when there's a chance.
Okay, yes, you can speak.
The concern from a staff perspective, and Misty, jump in if you'd like to add anything, is that we're getting significantly increased costs, not only this past year, but projections for the future in terms of what the transit service is going to cost all of their their various entities that they serve, UW, Middleton, Sun Prairie, us, Verona, etc. And so there's a lot of unknowns out there in regards to how that could impact us financially. I think being part of some of the regional transit solutions is a great idea, but committing to one entity moving forward concerns me significantly. I think we need to look at options out there as soon as this year for transit service for our community. Madison Metro being one, obviously, but I think we need to see what else is out there and what financial impact that would have on our budget. I know the mayor has the same perspective. Misty, would you like to weigh in and let, because we have two committee members, let them know what happened last year?
Yeah, so it's actually happening this year even. So we are in the process right now of figuring out how we can either reduce service or change the routes somehow to make it so that our Metro payment is within the amount that was budgeted. And then with all of the changes happening, we've gotten notice that are going to be some pretty significant increases each of the next 2 years to the tunes of a couple $100,000 each year-ish. Which is concerning from a budget perspective. So I think at the last meeting, the whole meeting, I reported that we had $500 and some left in our levy limit. So to be able to absorb, multiple hundreds of thousands of dollars for a service is going to be difficult. And I think there are possibly other options out there where we could still provide service either at that level or at even maybe a higher level for a reduced cost. I think that's something that we should probably explore.
Okay, I want to have my perspective here. I don't see that this resolution is like a contract with Madison Metro. I don't see it like that way. And then I have heard about this option for a couple of months. The council haven't had anything in the, to discuss. So maybe something that we need to put a deadline and to start discussing what are the other options, okay? If we are gonna discuss it this year and when it's gonna be this year. But eventually we need to renew the contract with Madison Metro, I imagine in the fall. I don't know if we renew like a 3 years is a contract. I don't remember. I think okay. So so here is what I don't see this resolution like a contract that we need to go with them. It's more like let's continue exploring opportunity and option with them. But I think this resolution is a good step to start the discussion at the council about and plant the seed with the people that they are watching us right now about that we have an issue, a transportation issue in the city, a connectivity issue, and that we need to also inform the public that Madison is coming every year, increasing our services without any improvement of the service. What I mean is we are paying more for the same routes. So maybe this resolution is like a plant the seed to start the discussion about what we're going to do, how we're going to move forward, So this is how I see it.
I have a comment as well. Okay, Randy, if you want to go first.
Yes,
Who's going to speak? Who's going to, Randy?
Randy is speaking.
Okay.
Thank you. If we go along with what you phrased, Julia, that this is not a contract and we're just forwarded onto council to have that debate, and it'd probably be a spirited debate. I have certain reservations at this point, just from a dollar standpoint. I think it's a great idea for additional transportation for the city of Fitchburg, and to expand if it's within reason and we're not pushing that subsidized extreme dollars onto the taxpayer. And if there's alternatives, I'd like to see those alternatives brought forward. I do have certain reservations, but since I do not know a dollar amount at this point, I probably will vote in favor of moving it forward. But I'm anxious to get involved in that discussion during council.
Yeah, so thanks, Randy. I appreciate that. I also am going to move this forward because it's my resolution, but my one concern is, Pat and Misty, this is the first I've heard of your concerns in relation to this resolution, and that I haven't had a chance to. I'm just curious why it wasn't brought up before either of the committees we've discussed this at before, because this was referred back over a month ago. So I'm just curious why I haven't heard anything or like read a memo from you, because this is really the first I've heard. The committees were very much in support of this, so this is literally the first time I've ever heard of staff having issue with this resolution. So I'm just curious about that history.
Well, we actually brought this issue up before this body was elected. Gabriella, it was discussed over the winter months and into the spring when we were aware of the changes in the invoicing we received from Madison Metro. And at that point in time, we had stated that we were going to put out an RFP this year to look for other options. So that is, I believe we communicated that to the various bodies at that point in time, and that's why we're bringing it up now to you and to the finance or the council. The other thing is that we expected when Madison Metro made their presentation to both or transportation and transit, that they would bring this up as a factor. I found out after the fact that they didn't bring anything in regards to cost up at that point in time.
Was this Was that plan to put out an RFP, was that discussed in Transportation and Transit Committee back in the winter?
No, I was given to council and to finance.
So it
We
went direct to
notified-
council?
We notified both bodies of the cost increase and stated that we would be looking at other options moving forward.
Is there a reason it wasn't discussed at Transportation and Transit?
I don't know.
Okay. All right, well, I guess we can continue this discussion at council just I do have more questions, but I don't think it necessarily needs to be discussed in the context of the Finance Committee, so we can save that for council.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay, are all in favor to vote? All
Yes.
those in favor of approving resolution R-127-20, say aye.
Aye.
To
Nay.
clarify, this is 126.
What did I say?
You said 127.
Oh, okay, 126, okay. Say, so ayes. What did the people say already? Okay. Nays, the motion carries. Okay. So next, I need a motion to approve resolution R-127-20, resolution adding hazard pay for Fitchburg City poll workers for the August 20 and November 2020 election. Do I have a motion? Hello?
Motion to approve?
Okay. So Gabriela, you brought this work forward. Can you
Yes.
explain?
Yeah, so the purpose of this amendment is it's to acknowledge the risk that poll workers are taking in serving at the polls, spending that time indoors, interacting with potentially hundreds of people over the course of that day. So in acknowledgement of that risk that they're taking, providing hazard pay. And then also, I've put it in the context of how much poll workers are paid in other municipalities. So Madison's obviously a neighboring municipality, and they already pay their poll workers significantly higher than what happens in Fitchburg. So I took that into account and proposed a $7 per hour increase, which would, with the $8 per hour current rate, would bring it up to $15 per hour. And that $7 per hour increase could be extended to other people that work the polls at a higher rate. And that's the intent of the resolution, and in the hopes that we can also make sure that we are fully staffed as a result of properly acknowledging the risk that poll workers are taking.
Julio, we do have Sarah is on now because this matter went in front of the Personnel Committee.
Okay.
And so I think Sarah and I would both like to weigh in on this, but I'll let Sarah go first.
Okay.
Thanks, Ed. Hi, everybody.
Hi.
At Personnel, we talked a little bit about the hazard pay, and I just want to bring up some concerns from other department heads. We have our police, our fire employees, we have our library staff, we have other clerks department staff that work right alongside the poll workers. So to only give hazard pay to our poll workers, we're creating some inequities with staff that have high contact with customers and in buildings, our library staff, for example, or other clerks department staff. I agree with Gabriela, our pay is only $8 per hour. And if you look at our comparable communities, Sun Prairie, Verona, Middleton, they're all paying at least $10 per hour. So Middleton's $10, Verona $10.50, and Sun Prairie $10.75. So I do see a need for a pay increase. I just wanted to let you know that I do have concerns with employee morale if we were to open this box of allowing hazard pay for one group of one classification and not others. Yeah.
Okay. Pat?
And if I could weigh in on that also, I see this, and I brought this up at Personnel Committee too, and I think there was some level of agreement there, is I see this more of as a budgetary issue where the salaries of our poll workers are under that level of what we see of our comparable communities, as Sarah just noted. But I think that's an issue that we can solve during the budget process. But by defining it as hazard pay, what we're going to be doing is not only opening up the the non-union employees to concerns on this, but we have a potential for grievance from our represented employees that are out in the field on a regular basis, encountering the public, countless numbers of times a day. And this would be providing poll workers with a hazard pay that work one day, maybe 2 days in the fall, 2 election days. Not nearly the same opportunity for the number of encounters that the rest of the employees are seeing. It's also, this is my belief, but I don't think we're going to get any more poll workers by just paying them a little bit of more money. I think if someone's afraid of this virus enough that they don't want to work for $10 or $9 an hour, that they're not going to work for $15 an hour. That's my personal opinion. So I think it's something that should be resolved through the budget. We haven't budgeted for this increase this year. And so that's another reason I think we need to make this a budget issue. I don't know if Misty, you want to weigh in?
Yeah, so the idea of making our pay in line with the comparables is definitely a budget time conversation. Something that we could look at for 2021 for sure. We're still in the very early stages of that. The other thing I would like to add is the cost that I put together. I did it based solely on the non-employee poll workers, because when the proposal as it is now also includes that same differential for city employees, which creates just a more complicated calculation. It's not just the same flat $7, but there's benefits that may be associated with it. And then the bigger complication is with overtime. So if an employee works overtime for that, it actually affects the overtime that they'll receive for the other departments or for their normal department. So that piece of it was too much of a nuance for me to really calculate. So the number that's in front of you for the proposed budget amendment is just for the $7 for the LTE staff, I'll call them.
Julia?
Comments?
Randy?
Yes, okay.
I'm going to echo Misty and Pat's and Sarah's comments. I think this is a great initiative. However, in my career, having managed union, non-management, I do see this as a potential as well as an issue with grievances. I think if we're going to offer this to poll workers, we're going to see fire, police, city staff requesting the same, because they're every day they're confronted with hazardous situations. EMS, I should have mentioned. However, $8 in my mind is ridiculous. We should be setting a standard here of at least 15. But also on that note, most of the poll workers probably do this out of civic duty. But regardless, $8 is an embarrassment. I'm willing to approve $15, but I do not think that we should be approving of as hazardous pay.
I would like to clarify one other thing just from a budget process perspective. So right now that cost is proposed to come from the COVID funding. So if we're saying this isn't hazard pay, then I think we need to go back to the budget and see what other area we want to absorb that increase if we're going to for this year.
I want to make some comments. Police, firefighter, EMS, I think they already have their own, they are covered with, we passed some resolution in the past regarding this. We are talking about 2 days in the fall, one day in August and one in the fall. And, I don't buy it, the morale issue, because most of the staff at the city, they make more than $8 an hour, okay? So it's not like we are incrementing like a $50 an hour, So we are talking to 8 to 15, or we can change it to 8 to 10 or to 8 to 12. We can make all this changing because we have the motion on the table. So, and also I know that, yeah, some people, they do it for the civic duties. Some people, they don't do it for the money, but at least we need to, as a city, we need to show the rest of the community that we care for our polling workers, that we want to protect them. You know, those people are going to be exposed maybe 8 hours to a lot of people, different type of people. So, and I know that the amount is minimal, is nominal, but the gesture is big. So I don't know if we can, Gabriela, you want to reduce the amount to instead of 15 to 12 or to 10, like the other municipalities? I don't know.
I mean, I would certainly be open to that type of amendment if that's what the Finance Committee wants to do. I guess I'll just have a couple of small comments, and there's more I want to talk about at council.
Okay.
But just number one, I would love to pay hazard pay to the other employees, and so I guess my intent when I created this resolution was not to say that we would never pay hazard pay to other employees, but just that because this particular situation was emerging. So I will probably, I asked this at personnel, but that meeting was not recorded in its entirety, so that was not able to be on the record. But I do think we should talk about why and I understand that we might not be able to pay hazard pay, but we should be clear about why that's not possible. And then also, poll workers are a little bit different than city staff in terms of they aren't hired by the city, so they are not protected by our sick pay. If a poll worker walks in, they work for one day, they get sick, there's no protection for them whatsoever. Whereas with our staff, we actually have instituted some additional sick leave time, and we'll work with them if for some reason they did come down with COVID in the line of duty. So I do think this is a complicated issue. I really appreciate Pat and Sarah, bringing forward these staff considerations, and I want to dig into that more at council. That being said, I plan to push this forward because I want to have that discussion at council, and this is my resolution. But if Julia or Randy do want to introduce an amendment to reduce the amount of money in the hopes that we can actually make this happen as hazard pay, I would certainly be interested in talking about that.
I'm not interested in reducing the amount. I'm suggesting $15 an hour. I'm suggesting removing the hazardous pay, the wording. I think that becomes a legal issue, or it's going to become an issue. I don't.
My other comment is that if we wait until budget, then we are talking about 2021 election. It's gonna be one in April, and that's it. So I think what Gabriela wants to do is something about this year election. So I know that Pat, that one is something that maybe we can discuss at, for 2021. We can talk about that, what to do, but I think the intention of this resolution was to talk about, the August and November election. So we can discuss the 21 election in budget time. So I don't know what is the legality. I don't understand the legal issue that the city can have if we increase with polling workers. There are other municipalities out there that they are doing this now. So what is the legal?
That wouldn't be the legal issue.
No?
Randy's referring to the hazard pay as a potential legal issue.
Correct.
Yes.
Not the increase in salaries.
Okay.
Or the hourly rate, I should say. The increase in hourly rate is generally up to the city. But my concern, and I think Misty's concern with that, is that we don't have that budgeted for this year. If you want to increase basically almost double the pay of let's just say almost double the pay of the poll workers, we need to figure out where that's coming from in the budget. We just don't have extra money laying around.
I think that we can look at the budget. There are a lot of departmental that they budget money for travels, and they are not using the money because they cannot travel, So maybe we can look at those. I don't know. I am talking about, I know that some departmental, they have some travel amounts, and they're not going to use it. So,
Yeah, I guess, so my point for that being tonight is that, maybe we need to get that information and the alders proposing the amendments, we can add that information to the resolution so that there's something clear in front of this body and the council where the money would come from. Because right now it's just, we're throwing darts. We're throwing darts here and hoping we hit something in regards to a money tree.
And so right now it's classified as hazard pay, which I think hazard pay coming out of the COVID funding makes sense. If ultimately you're removing the concept that this isn't hazard pay, that this is making us in line with comparables, I think then you have to go a different direction with your budget amendment. And it would be back to looking at expenses. And Julia, it's a fair point that a lot of training and travel has stopped. But remember from the COVID report earlier in the meeting, a lot of our financials are kind of teetering. So that reduced cost is helping us offset more so some of the lost revenues that we are experiencing.
so if we leave the word hazard, we can use the funds for, where is for COVID?
So it's not eligible for the grant. So it won't be grant eligible, but in theory, you could at least tie it to the COVID response funding that we're doing. But I concur with Sarah and Pat that I think the phrase of hazard pay will cause concern amongst other staff.
Okay, so,
Randy,
okay,
does someone want to amend it then? Randy, did you want to make an amendment? I'm just curious if that's something that we want to consider.
Yes, I would like to amend it to remove hazard pay, and make this eloquent, but to increase the hourly wage from $8 to $15 an hour. Does it have to be any more complicated than that, the amendment, Julia?
that's it. If you want to amend, you're putting a friendly amend, okay?
I consider it a friendly amendment for sure.
We do need budget funding though. So what's your proposal for how that difference is going to get paid for?
And that what you're asking me, Misty?
As part of the amendment, yeah.
Well, I would think that Julia's suggestion as far as travel, I would think that there would be sufficient dollars there if we're not traveling. I would hope that the city of Fitchburg has budgeted well, and for the city staff, and with COVID, there would be sufficient dollars to support this amendment. Is that?
So I'm not certain that that's true.
Okay.
The two biggest departments that do training is the police department, which I believe Chad mentioned about that policy and procedure manual he plans to put through as a budget amendment. He plans to use that training and travel money to help push that initiative forward. And then the other one is the fire department, but a lot of their training has continued because it's more in-house training and skills-based training that needs to continue. So there is some like finance department and HR and stuff like that, but I don't know that it will add up to the dollar amount
So
that you're
not
looking
knowing
for
the
without
dollar amounts,
looking.
I'm sorry. So not knowing what those dollar amounts are this evening, this amendment cannot move forward, is what you're stating.
That would be my thought. I think you could table it until the next meeting to give yourself time to figure out where you want to
All right.
No,
amend the
we
budget.
cannot table, because if we table, we are not gonna, the intention of the amendment was to increase the polling for the August or November, you know what I mean? So Gabriela, if we table this in, we are missing the August 11 election.
Can I just clarify something with Misty and Pat? So we literally can never vote on anything that has a budget implication in this body unless we have a specific line by line, like determination of where that money is going to change in the budget. Like we can never vote on anything without knowing exactly how it's going to change. And that's laid out in the actual budget amendment, in the actual resolution. I'm sorry.
How it's going to be paid for, basically, yes.
That's
So
a requirement.
The legal level of authority, you guys are approving it by account number. So the budget that's adopted is by account number. If we ever want to move money within account numbers, there's ordinances that talk about what that process is and when it can be done administratively by the mayor and when it can be done by you guys. But there is a formal budget amendment process outlined by the statute.
So let me be clear, the only two options this evening is to either table it, or I approve along with my fellow colleagues to move it to council, and then we have discussion there.
Yeah.
Given that, I will say aye and move it forward.
We need to address the amendment
No,
first.
I understand. I'm
Randy,
just
you
making a
made an
statement.
amendment. Are you
Oh.
moving forward with that, or are you withdrawing that?
No, I'm
amendment?
withdrawing the amendment.
Okay.
Hey, Brandy,
Okay.
can I just ask a quick question here? City of Madison pays $13.62 per hour, is that right? And so we're proposing $15 per hour?
I'm
for
proposing
election workers?
$15 an hour. Yes.
Okay, just wanted to make
I
sure.
don't, I don't
we're-
pay attention to
we're
Madison.
suggesting higher than
You know what?
Madison.
Yeah, thank you, Sarah. I'm not paying attention to Madison. We don't live in Madison. I know others bring that into the equation. I understand I could look at Sun Prairie and Middleton, but I have a day job, and the philosophy is $15 an hour. It's a reasonable wage given today's world. We're too busy fighting for a minimum wage, and $15 is my mind. Somebody else can argue with that on my point if they'd like.
Sounds good.
But thank you though, Sarah. I'm not.
Okay,
Make a
all those in favor of resolution R-127-20, say aye.
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 Aye, the motion carries. So next, I need a motion to approve resolution R-132-20, authorizing acceptance of the 2020 street and park improvement bid is a direct referral.
Motion to approve.
Okay, who's gonna talk about this?
This is our annual street resurfacing bidding process. So you'll see all of the projects came in under bid except for a couple of amendments that were needed, which are outlined on the referral sheet and included in the resolution. Since they're taking money from one expense account that's authorized to another, it only needs a simple majority in order to approve. But it was publicly bid, 2 bids were received, and we're recommending low bid.
Okay, so I have a question here, maybe it's in the document. We need to have a budget amendment for $43,000. Another one from 10,000. So what is gonna happen with the money that we are taking from the sidewalk fund?
So there wasn't,
That we are not gonna pave sidewalk, or is money that is, you know what I mean?
yep, the sidewalk program this year is much less than what we thought it was going to be. So they walk the city and see what sidewalk needs to be repaired and replaced. And that amount was less than what we expected. So there's extra money there to reallocate to the rest of the project.
And I don't know where I see in the document, I saw, one second, it's
There was-
opening there.
Yeah, there's a separate, this for the storm resurfacing, right? Where we had to move 43,000 from CIP 4702 in order to cover that.
Yeah. And so 4702 was the pond dredging at Seminole Village, and staff combined that with the McKee project, and were able to get a really good price, made some efficiencies there. And so some of that money that they save from efficiencies, they want to move over to finish this project.
Is there a time-sensitive nature to this project? Is there a reason why it's a direct referral?
I'm not certain. I know bidding happened. So the bids happen July 9th. Generally, sometimes what'll happen is that first meeting, it will go out as a quote unquote blank referral, which would have been that meeting that was canceled. And then it could have come to this one for action. So I'm going to guess that that's why it was a direct referral, is just because the last meeting wasn't there for the heads up referral piece.
Okay.
Okay, I have a problem with my PDF. I saw that one mentioned in some of the document mentioned about that due to a staff turnover. What does it mean that, you know what I mean, in one of the documents? So I was curious to see what is part of this in the package in the first place.
Yep, so that's on that referral sheet where it's talking about the stormwater budget amendment. So
Yeah.
the CIP project 3319, which is the streets resurfacing, has an amount for each one of the utilities as well. And due to the new person not knowing how all of that worked, when streets got shifted around, didn't know to update the stormwater piece. So it's a budgeting issue more so than anything else, which has been addressed now. But we're able to fix the budgeting issue because that other project came in under.
Okay. So why we are resurfacing the fire station number 1 where it's empty, or we don't use?
We are using it. So administration is still out of the Lacey Road Fire Station, as well as we have a lease with Safe Kids that's using it as well.
Okay, so that one was a question that I received from a neighbor.
Sure.
Okay, so any other question, Gabriela and Randy?
Not right now.
No.
Okay, all those in favor of resolution R-132-20, say aye.
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 Nays, the motion carried. So next I am looking for a resolution to, motion to approve resolution R-135-20, stormwater pump purchase. This is another direct referral.
Motion to approve.
Okay, so this is a very expensive pump.
So it was budgeted, and it's slightly under budget. So the pre-approval form should be in there so you can see why we're recommending the purchase that we are. But really this should help us so if we have storm events that we can pump out the water. The fear is if there's a large weather event, that being able to find a pump that's accessible and able to be rented when all the other municipalities around us are having the same problem, that will be difficult. So we proposed in the CIP and the budget to purchase our own pump to address those situations.
Excuse me, this is Randy. Is this the pump for that would pump water out of the Seminole Glen kettle? Pat, is that or am I? I know it was referenced in a common council maybe a month ago. I mean, is this pump large enough to do?
I think this one is going to be used for the what I watched public work meeting, and it's going to be used for the big pond in Seminole and Lacey. No, Seminole and Lacey Road.
Right.
And then it's going to be used when the city needs it from other, issues. Because
correct.
I know that I don't know how much it costs to rent every time that the city needs to rent this.
Julia, we do have Bill on the line too, in case
Okay.
you have questions.
Yes. So we want, why do we really need? I know that it was in the CIP in previous years, so it's coming. But the question is, I know that how much it costs to rent this pump. If we need to rent it, how many times we rent it per year. So we are looking at the cost, versus the purchase, own it versus lease it. I imagine that there is a benefit in purchase this. And the other question is, what is the life for this type of pump?
The city had rented the pump in 2018 and 2019. We rented it once in 2018 and twice in 2019 to pump out the pond at Hillside Heights. And as you had mentioned, we also are going to be pumping it out for the Sub-Zero pond over there. That's a closed basin as well. We can use it in the Seminole Village or the Seminole Heights pond. It's going to be difficult to get it in there, but we bought enough hose and pipe and everything to be able to pump that down in case it does get too high. So we've typically our rental rates were between $8,000 and $15,000 depending on the pump size and how much hose we rented. So we can see a recovery on that if the weather trends keep going, within 10 years. Mm-hmm. The pump will last at least 25 years with good maintenance. So we plan, it's not going to be used as much as a car or a truck. So as long as we take good care of it, it'll be around.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Good.
So it's a good, 25 year, yeah, makes sense, And if we are renting a $15,000 twice a year, you know what I mean? It makes sense. So, any other question for Bill? Okay, all those in favor of approving resolution R-135-20, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, nays, the motion carries. Next, I need a motion to approve resolution R-140-20. It's a preliminary assessment resolution for the 2020 Lacy Road Sanitary Sewer Extension.
Motion to
This is
approve.
another direct referral.
Motion to approve.
Okay, Bill. What is this?
This is, excuse me, this is a preliminary resolution for the city to declare their intent to special assess for the sanitary sewer extension on Lacey Road between the Badger State Trail and it would be the east property line of Crescent Crossing subdivision. There's two property owners with that assessment. Would be for Crescent Crossing and then the O'Brien solar farm to the south of that.
So my question is, how much is going to be this project?
We haven't determined those final costs yet for that extension and what the final, that's what's coming with the report that we're going to be preparing.
But then you mentioned that we are going to assess this cost to the neighbor. So one is going to be the solar. So is the solar is going to pay the assessment, you know what I mean? Or the city is going to absorb the cost?
The solar farm is the property that it is zoned on or resides on is agricultural, and we defer those assessments for utilities on agricultural land until it develops or is sold.
Okay, so the solar lot is not going to pay for the assess. Okay, it's fine. So the rest is going to be assessed to the neighbors, to those two developments there. The one is the crossing and the other one is the other face of Stoner Prairie.
Yes, it would be for the...
No, what is
yes.
the Crescent? Crescent, no.
Crescent Crossing, yes.
Crescent Crossing.
It would be for that development. The developer would pay that assessment on behalf of the owners.
But the city will, a big chunk of that cost that we cannot access to the solar farm, the city will absorb that. So we don't know yet, we don't know the percentage?
It would be 50% of the project cost.
Okay. Okay.
Misty, question for you. Is the delaying the special assessment payments for up to 2 years, is that have concerns in terms of finances for the city, or is that something we'll cross once the assessments of this project is done?
Yeah, so I mean, it's not ideal by any means, but again, the two utilities tend to be relatively healthy. So I feel like we have a cash flow balance that we could use to support that. And I think it's a relatively small thing we can do for our community at this point.
Great, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Any other question? All those in favor of resolution R-140-20, say aye.
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 Nays, the motion carried. Next, I am looking for a motion to approve resolution R-141-20, approving said amendment to agreement for subdivision improvements in the plat of Terravesa. This is another direct referral.
This item
Motion to approve.
A direct referral.
Hey, Bill, we need a motion first. Sorry.
Oh yeah, sorry.
That's right. Motion to approve.
Thank you. Sorry about that.
Hey, thanks.
Okay, you're ready, Bill.
Yes. The Terravesa agreement, we have in there that the developer will pay for and install street lighting. It was discovered that the street lights themselves would not be covered under their lifetime warranty if the warranty doesn't transfer. So if the developer pays for those, the city would not get the warranty, lifetime warranty on that. So we're amending the agreement for the city to purchase, the developer to reimburse the city for those costs, so that we can receive that lifetime warranty.
Okay, so this one is another resolution that we don't see the amount in the actual resolution. So how much is this?
I don't have that exact cost. We're getting final bids on that, but it's just indicating that the city would get reimbursed or would pay for those and they get reimbursed by the developer.
Okay.
Right now, you're just authorizing who's gonna pay upfront.
Ah, okay,
You're not
okay.
actually authorizing the purchase.
Okay, yeah, okay. Sorry, yeah, I found, yeah, okay. Any other question? All those in favor of resolution R-141-20 say aye.
Aye.
Nays, the motion carries. So we are at the end of our agenda. So the next is our announcement, and the next meeting is gonna be August 11, 2020. So I need a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor of adjournment say aye.
Aye.
Nays? The motion carries, and we are adjourning at 7:30. Wow. Okay.